Greetings and welcome to EHA Unplugged, the official podcast channel of the European Hematology Association, EHA.
We are pleased to welcome today Professor Julio Delgado from the Hospital Clinic de Barcelona to tell us about his own experience in pursuing regulatory approval for CAR T cell therapy produced in an academic setting. These therapies fall under the EU regulation on ATMPs, Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products. In February 2021, his team achieved the first authorization of an academic CAR T product from the Spanish Agency of Medicines and Medical Devices under the hospital exemption approval pathway foreseen by this EU regulation. In this podcast, Professor Delgado will share his own experience learning to navigate the EU regulatory expectations by working at the European Medicines Agency, EMA. Listen to this podcast to take advantage of his valuable expertise. Welcome, Professor Delgado.
Yes, I'm Julio Delgado. I'm a hematologist. I work at Hospital Clinic Barcelona.
First, Professor Delgado, could you give us a rough idea of the regulatory landscape for CAR T therapy in Europe?
The regulation, you have to follow the EU legislation, of course, and there's an entire chapter on ATMP manufacturing there. You can't really express how this regulation is. It's too complicated to even summarize. And that is why you need help. You basically need help from people who have experience, even need to understand the language, which can be sometimes difficult. So talking about myself, I'm going to use my own experience. In the year 2020, I decided to actually go to the European Medicines Agency, and I spent there 15 months as a seconded national expert. And the goal was to actually learn the language, to understand why they ask for stuff and how they justify doing this and that. If you're going to ask for a marketing authorization application, you need to understand that there are two types: full marketing authorization and conditional marketing authorization. For one, you need some type of clinical trial. For the other, you may get away with a smaller clinical trial. But then, if you're opting for conditional marketing authorization, you need to demonstrate major therapeutic advantage over fully approved products. All this that I'm saying isn't common knowledge to a hematologist.
You have to enter into a legislator's
You have to change your mindset, and you have to understand the language. And early, when you're starting your development, it doesn't help if you learn all this towards the end, because there are a lot of stuff that you should have done before to get there in a good situation where you can get the product approved. So there are people working at my institution that have been there at the European Medicines Agency working years ago. Well, that is priceless. So having that insight, being at the other side and then helping you to get through the regulatory process. Again, this is something that requires a change in mindset and time and dedication. But if you have it, you may succeed. So I'm not saying we will succeed, because we may not, because it's not easy. And actually, achieving a marketing authorization in the EU has never happened to an academic product. Never, ever in the history of the European Medicines Agency. It's always been pharmaceutical companies. So we're trying to be the first. We're trying to be the first, or maybe the second. We don't care if somebody comes first, and we may fail, but it doesn't matter because we are learning all the time, and then we are letting regulators know that we are capable of doing it. We are demonstrating to them all the time that this is possible. And when they talk to us, they always approach and they always say, the company. I always have to say, please remember, we're not a pharmaceutical company. Clinicians, we work for a non-for-profit academic institution.
Both sides have to adapt. The academic side have to understand the regulators, and they have to understand the situation.
Without changing the standards. So we're not asking for reduced standards. We're not asking for less quality. We're just asking for a bit of understanding, and also understanding that funding is an issue. So again, there's a situation where they need to understand us and we need to understand them. So that's why we need to be in touch. That's why we need to discuss. We need to talk as much as possible.
So HTA is the health technology assessment, and now all medicines have to go through this process for reimbursement.
Correct.
So have you been faced with having to do an HTA product?
Not yet, but that is part of. So we got funding for an EU-based trials. This will be the first time our products are administered to different patients in different EU countries at the same time. This hasn't happened before. And we will use that clinical trial to start early health technology assessment. This is something that pharmaceutical companies know very well, and that is needed because one thing is to have the product approved and a different thing is to have it reimbursed. And for CAR T cells, this is particularly problematic since some of the products are approved but basically not available to most EU patients. The thing here is that, of course, health technology assessment is based on efficacy, safety, and also the cost of the product. So when your product is cheaper, it's generally easier to have a favorable health technology assessment. Usually HTA requires randomized trials. Randomized trials are something that are not really possible for us, and that would be a struggle. So convincing the payers that our products are worth reimbursing, even though these approvals may not be based on randomized control trials. We have a team of experts in HTA in this project, this European project, both in Barcelona and in the Netherlands, in Nijmegen. So we'll see.
For the moment, are the products you produce reimbursed?
Only in Spain and only in one specific indication, which is adult acute lymphoblastic.
So it has to be out of the patient's pocket?
Not the patients, the regional health authority. So, for instance, if a patient from Extremadura comes to Barcelona, we need a statement from the Extremadura's health authority saying they will pay for the cell manufacturing. If you accept to pay, then we manufacture the product. Not the patient. The patients never pay in Spain.
To my knowledge, the price of CAR T therapy is about 60,000 euros in an academic setting and around 300,000 euros for commercial CAR Ts. This is crucial for the number of patients that can be treated. What is your experience with this?
Yeah, well, 60,000 is not the official price of our product. Our product's official price is 89,000 because there's a small margin there and there's a calculation done. But it is true that with improvements in the technology and bioreactors and lentiviral manufacturing, the price could go down to 60 and even less, and even 50, 40.
And in an industry setting, it's more like than 100 to even 500,000. No?
It could reach those numbers, 250, 300.
This is a positive way to end this interview, as this means that thanks to the efforts of academia, the price of CAR T therapy could considerably come down in the near future. And of course, this is good news because then CAR T therapy could benefit more patients. Thank you very much, Professor Delgado, for sharing your time and your expertise with us. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much for having me.